There are thousands of emergency calls made every single day. Most are forgotten before the next shift begins. Routine burglaries, domestic disputes, strange noises in the middle of the night. But every once in a while, an officer answers a call so disturbing, so unbelievable, that it stays with them forever. The story you're about to hear was shared with this channel by someone who claims to know the officer involved. Like many Bigfoot encounters, it has not been independently verified. It remains an eyewitness account, and we invite you to decide for yourself what to believe. According to that account, a frightened farmer called police after hearing something enormous inside his old barn. He believed an intruder had broken in. The responding officer expected to find a trespasser, or perhaps a black bear looking for shelter. Instead, he claimed he walked into something that shouldn't have existed. An injured creature, covered in dark hair, protecting a frightened baby. And outside the barn, something else was waiting. If this account is true, it may be one of the most extraordinary Bigfoot encounters ever shared. If it isn't, then someone created one of the most haunting wilderness stories you'll ever hear. Either way, once you hear what happened that night, you may never look at a lonely barn or a dark forest the same way again. This is the story of the officer who answered a call about an intruder, only to claim he found an injured Bigfoot and its baby. Officer was called about an intruder in the barn. The intruder was an injured Bigfoot and its baby. Every police officer remembers one call that refuses to leave them. It isn't always the most dangerous. It isn't always the most violent. Sometimes, it's simply the one that cannot be explained. The story you're about to hear was shared with this channel by someone who claims to know the officer involved. Like many Bigfoot encounter stories, it has not been independently verified. It remains an eyewitness account, told as it was shared. Whether you believe every word or remain completely skeptical, we'll leave that decision to you. It happened during the final weeks of autumn in a quiet farming community surrounded by miles of thick forest. The nearest town was almost 30 minutes away. After sunset, darkness settled quickly across the countryside. Locals were used to hearing coyotes. Occasionally, black bears wandered through the area looking for food. Even mountain lions had been spotted from time to time. But what happened that night didn't resemble any of them. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the county dispatch center received an emergency call. The dispatcher answered as usual. "County Sheriff's Office, what's your emergency?" For several seconds, no one spoke. All she could hear was heavy breathing. Finally, a nervous voice whispered, "There's something in my barn." The dispatcher assumed it was another animal complaint. She calmly asked whether it was a bear. "No." The man answered immediately. "I've lived out here for 36 years. I know what a bear sounds like." The dispatcher asked him to explain. The farmer struggled to find the words. He said he had been awakened by loud crashing noises coming from the old livestock barn behind his house. At first, he thought thieves were stealing equipment. He grabbed his flashlight and walked outside. From nearly 50 yards away, he heard something moving inside. Heavy footsteps. Slow, deliberate, each one shaking the wooden floor beneath it. He shouted toward the barn. Nothing answered. Then, he heard what he described as a deep, painful groan. Not an animal growl, not a human voice. Something in between. Curious but uneasy, the farmer stepped a little closer. That's when another sound came from inside. A softer cry, almost like a frightened child. He immediately backed away. Something about the sounds made every instinct tell him not to get any closer. Instead, he hurried back inside his house, locked every door, and called the sheriff's office. The dispatcher asked him one final question. "Can you see what's inside?" His answer was immediate. No, and I don't want to. Because only one deputy was patrolling nearby, the call was assigned to a veteran officer who had spent nearly 12 years working the county's rural districts. He had responded to everything from escaped livestock to armed suspects hiding in abandoned buildings. Nothing surprised him anymore. When dispatch radioed the call, he actually smiled. He assumed someone had mistaken another black bear for an intruder. It happened several times every year. Without requesting backup, he acknowledged the call and turned his patrol vehicle onto the narrow county road leading toward the farm. Rain earlier that evening had left the pavement slick. Fog drifted between the towering pine trees lining both sides of the road. The farther he drove, the quieter the world became. His headlights carved narrow tunnels through the darkness. The only sounds inside the patrol car were the tires rolling across wet pavement and the occasional crackle of the police radio. About 20 minutes later, the farmhouse finally appeared. A single porch light glowed against the darkness. The farmer stood waiting beside an old pickup truck, gripping a flashlight so tightly his knuckles had turned white. As the officer stepped from his patrol car, he immediately noticed something unusual. The farmer wasn't looking at him. He was staring toward the barn. Without saying hello, he quietly pointed. "It's still in there." The officer asked if anyone else had gone inside. The farmer shook his head. "Whatever's making those sounds, I'm not getting anywhere near it." The officer switched on his flashlight. Its bright beam stretched across the open field toward the aging red barn standing alone against the edge of the forest. Everything else was silent. No cattle moved. No horses stamped their feet. Even the farm dogs were hiding beneath the porch. The officer later admitted that silence bothered him more than the emergency call itself. Animals always reacted to danger. Tonight, they weren't making a sound, taking one slow breath. He rested his hand near his holster and began walking toward the barn. Each step echoed across the damp ground. Halfway there, he stopped. A deep groan rolled from inside the barn. Long, slow, filled with pain. Every hair on the back of his neck stood up. Then came another sound, smaller, higher pitched, almost like a frightened child trying not to cry. Whatever had entered the barn, it wasn't alone. The officer slowly climbed the wooden steps leading to the entrance. The weathered door stood slightly open. Something had forced it inward. He placed one hand against the rough timber, took a slow breath, and pushed the door open. The beam from his flashlight disappeared into the darkness. What waited inside would become the most unforgettable moment of his entire career. The old wooden door creaked as it slowly swung inward. The beam from the officer's flashlight sliced through the darkness. Dust floated through the cold air. The smell hit him first. It wasn't the familiar scent of livestock or damp hay. It was something far stronger. Earth, wet leaves, rotting wood. And beneath it all, a powerful musky odor unlike anything he had ever experienced. The officer instinctively covered his nose. Whatever was inside, it had been there for some time. His flashlight moved slowly across the barn. Broken boards covered the floor. Several feed bags had been ripped open. Fresh hay had been dragged into one corner, as though something had tried to build a place to rest. Then, the light stopped moving. At the far end of the barn, against the back wall, sat an enormous figure. For a brief moment, the officer couldn't process what he was seeing. His training told him it had to be a person, but no human could possibly be that large. The creature appeared well over 7 feet tall, even while sitting down. Its shoulders were unbelievably broad. Long arms rested across its knees. Its body was covered in thick, dark brown hair, matted with mud, dried blood, and pieces of straw. The creature wasn't growling. It wasn't preparing to attack. It was breathing. Slowly, painfully. Each breath sounded like it required tremendous effort. The officer's flashlight drifted lower. Only then did he notice the injuries. One shoulder carried several deep gashes. Fresh blood stained the hair around its upper arm. Its left leg lay stretched awkwardly across the floor, as though putting weight on it caused unbearable pain. The officer had seen hunters injured by bears. He had seen livestock torn apart by predators. But these wounds looked different, almost as though the creature had survived an incredible struggle. For several long seconds, neither of them moved. The creature simply watched him. Its eyes reflected the flashlight, not glowing, just watching. Intelligent, aware, almost human. Then the officer heard something shift behind it. He quickly raised the flashlight. A much smaller figure stepped into the light. At first, he honestly believed it was a child, no taller than 4 feet, covered in reddish-brown hair. Large, dark eyes fixed on the stranger standing in the doorway. The smaller creature immediately moved closer to the injured adult. It wrapped one arm around the larger figure and peeked cautiously around its shoulder. The officer later admitted that this single moment completely changed how he viewed the situation. He no longer felt like he had interrupted a dangerous predator. Instead, he felt as though he had walked into the middle of a frightened family trying desperately to hide. The smaller creature never looked away from him. It seemed curious, terrified, confused. The injured adult slowly lifted one massive hand and gently pulled the youngster behind its body. The movement wasn't aggressive, it was protective, exactly the way any parent might shield their child. The officer's hand remained close to his sidearm. Years of training told him to prepare for the worst, but every instinct told him something else. This creature wasn't preparing to attack, it was protecting. The silence inside the barn became almost unbearable. Then, the smaller creature made a soft sound. Not a growl, not a bark. It sounded almost like a quiet whimper. The larger one answered with a deep rumbling tone. The little one immediately settled down. It was almost as though they were communicating. The officer stood frozen. His mind raced through every possible explanation. An escaped ape? Impossible. No zoo existed anywhere nearby. Someone wearing a costume? Equally impossible. No costume could explain the creature's size, its injuries, or the expression in its eyes. Then something happened that he would never forget. The injured creature slowly lowered its head, not in surrender, but almost as if it understood. The man standing before it wasn't there to harm them. For a brief moment, neither species moved. Two worlds separated by fear, simply staring at one another. Suddenly, a long howl echoed from somewhere beyond the tree line. It rolled across the farm like distant thunder. The larger creature's head snapped toward the barn entrance. The youngster immediately crouched lower against its side. Seconds later, another howl answered, this one much closer. Outside, something else had arrived. The officer slowly turned toward the open barn door. Beyond the beam of his flashlight, the darkness between the trees no longer felt empty. Someone, or something, was watching. And whatever it was, it knew exactly where they were. The howl echoed through the darkness. Then everything went silent again. The officer slowly turned toward the open barn door. His flashlight swept across the empty field. Nothing, just drifting fog, tall grass, and the black outline of the surrounding forest. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching. Years in law enforcement had taught him to trust his instincts. Right now, every instinct was telling him he wasn't alone. Inside the barn, the smaller creature remained pressed against the injured adult. It wasn't looking at the officer anymore. Its eyes were fixed on the woods, almost as if it recognized whoever, or whatever, had called. The injured creature let out another low rumble. This time, it sounded different. Not pain. Communication. Almost immediately. Another distant call answered from the forest. The officer's pulse quickened. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. For a moment, only static answered. He tried again. "This is Unit 12. I need another unit at my location." The signal broke apart. The heavy forest and surrounding hills were interfering with the transmission. He took a step backward toward the barn door, trying to find a stronger signal. Then, a loud crack echoed from the tree line. It sounded like a thick branch snapping under tremendous weight. The officer pointed his flashlight toward the sound. Nothing. Another crack. Closer this time. The farmer, who had remained near the house, suddenly shouted from across the yard. "Officer! There! By the trees!" The officer swung the flashlight toward the edge of the forest. For only a second, two enormous eyes reflected back. They disappeared almost instantly. Then another pair appeared several yards away. Then another. The officer couldn't tell exactly how many there were. 3? 4? Maybe more. Every pair of eyes remained perfectly still, watching, not advancing, not retreating, simply waiting. Inside the barn, the injured creature slowly tried to stand. It placed one massive hand against the wooden wall. The effort clearly caused pain. Its injured leg trembled beneath its weight. The smaller one immediately stayed close beside it.
The officer instinctively stepped aside. According to the account, he later said something he never expected to say during his career. "I'm not here to hurt you." Whether the creature understood the words or simply sensed his intentions, no one knows. But it paused. For several seconds, it stared directly into his eyes. The officer described its expression as something he could never explain. There was fear, exhaustion, but also recognition. Almost as though the creature understood that the human standing before it had made a choice. Slowly, the enormous figure limped toward the barn entrance. The smaller one never left its side. As they reached the doorway, another howl rolled across the property. This time, it came from only a few hundred feet away. The hidden figures in the forest had come to escort them home. The officer stepped farther aside. He later admitted he never once considered drawing his weapon. Everything about the creatures suggested they wanted only one thing: to leave. The injured adult disappeared into the darkness. The youngster followed close behind. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, several massive silhouettes emerged briefly between the trees. The officer could never make out clear details, only towering shapes moving silently through the darkness. Within seconds, they were gone. The forest became quiet once again. The only sounds remaining were the wind and the officer's own breathing. When daylight finally arrived, he returned with several deputies to examine the property. The barn floor contained enormous footprints pressed deep into the dirt. Outside, a trail of large tracks led toward the forest. Mixed among them were much smaller footprints, matching the juvenile he claimed to have seen, before anyone could document them properly. Rain began falling. Within hours, most of the impressions had disappeared. The only evidence left behind was the memory of a night that none of those present would ever forget. But according to the person who shared this story, the strangest part was still to come. When the sun finally rose over the quiet farmland, the night's events almost felt impossible. The officer returned with 2 other deputies to search the property in daylight. The farmer walked with them, though he admitted he had barely slept. No one knew exactly what they expected to find, but according to the account shared with this channel, the barn still held signs that something extraordinary had happened. The hay was flattened where the injured creature had rested. Several old wooden boards had been cracked from the inside. Fresh blood stained a small section of the floor near the back wall. Outside the barn, The soft ground revealed a trail leading toward the forest. The officer reportedly measured several footprints far larger than any humans. Mixed among them were much smaller prints that appeared to belong to the juvenile creature he believed he had seen. The tracks continued toward the tree line, then disappeared among rocks and fallen leaves. No photographs from that morning have ever surfaced. No official report describing a Bigfoot encounter has ever been made public. If one existed, it may have been filed under something far more ordinary. Or perhaps, it was never written at all. According to the person who shared this story, the officer rarely spoke about that night. Whenever friends or coworkers asked him what had happened, he simply answered, "Some things are better left in the woods." The farmer also claimed something changed after that night. For months afterward, he occasionally found unusually large footprints near the edge of his property. Nothing was ever stolen. No livestock disappeared. It was almost as if whatever had visited his barn remembered the kindness shown that night and never forgot it. Of course, there are many possible explanations. Some people believe fear can distort memories. Others suggest it may have been a bear seen under unusual circumstances, and many remain convinced that no unknown creature exists at all. Yet stories remarkably similar to this one continue to come from forests across North America. Different places, different witnesses, but often the same unsettling details: massive footprints, unexplained vocalizations, a powerful odor, and creatures that vanish before anyone can prove they were ever there. So, what really happened inside that lonely barn? Was it simply another story passed from one person to another? Or did one officer come face to face with something science has yet to explain? That answer may still be hidden somewhere beyond the trees. Now I'd like to hear from you. If you had been that officer, what would you have done? Would you have tried to help the injured creature, or would you have walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you or someone you trust has ever experienced something strange in the wilderness, I'd love to hear your story. Some of the most compelling accounts featured on this channel begin with viewers who were finally willing to tell what they experienced. Your story could be the next one we investigate. If you enjoy exploring eyewitness encounters, Bigfoot mysteries, and the unexplained, subscribe to Hidden Evidence Bigfoot and join this growing community of people searching for answers. Every week, we dive into new reports, forgotten cases, and mysterious encounters from across the world. Because somewhere, right now, someone is experiencing something they can't explain, and the next unforgettable Bigfoot story could be the one we share next. Until then, stay curious, stay open-minded, and remember, not every mystery stays buried forever.